Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to wait a few seconds to let folks get into the webinar and get started. Thanks for joining us. Hi there, this is Karen Bowles from the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation. Welcome to today's webinar, ARPA Child Care Stabilization Grants, fourth round payments and monitoring updates. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. When you joined today, you elected to join either by phone or computer. If for any reason you would like to change your selection, you can do so by following the directions in the automated email from Zoom, which contains instructions for how to join by phone and computer. This webinar is being recorded. All participants are placed on mute for quality assurance. You will have the opportunity to submit written questions by selecting Q&A on your control panel, which is located at the bottom of your screen. The recording of today's webinar and the slides will be shared by email with all registrants following the event and posted on VECF's website. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you find this information helpful. I'd now like to turn it over to Kathy Glazer, President of the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation.
Thanks, Karen, and good afternoon to everyone. It's terrific to have all 1,000 of you join us today, and we're looking forward to hearing some information and sharing some detail about the fourth round payments for the ARPA Child Care Stabilization Grants and monitoring updates from Jenna Conway, who is the Deputy Superintendent of the Division of Early Childhood Care and Education at the Virginia Department of Education. We will have plenty of time for answering your questions, and then we will hear from Vanessa DeLeo with the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation about some of the technical assistance opportunities available to providers. So with that, I think we'll introduce Jenna and welcome you to get started.
Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Kathy, and to the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation for hosting this webinar this afternoon. It's wonderful to be joining the foundation again to present this really important information to the field. I'm Jenna Conway. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Early Childhood Care and Education here at the Department of Education, and very excited to be here to talk with you about where we are with the Child Care Stabilization Grant Program and a final round of funding with more detail about that this afternoon. If we can go to the next slide, please. So what we'd like to do this afternoon is to give you an update on how much has gone out so far, remind you of some of the expectations for those dollars, share the plan for redistributing the remaining dollars, and then just walk through a set of next steps as it relates to processing and program monitoring. So we'll do an overview, we'll talk specifically about this final round, and then we'll look ahead. And then I'm very excited to have Vanessa follow me and talk a little bit about some of the technical assistance available, as I know many of you are still thinking about what are the best ways to use these dollars. Next slide, please. So let's talk about where we are to date on the Child Care Stabilization Grant Program. Next slide, please. So taking a big step back, and although late summer, early fall of last year of 2021 feels like years ago, I just want to remind you about the purpose of the program, how much we receive, and what we've done since then. So more than a year ago, last spring, our U.S. Congress approved the American Rescue Plan Act, which we sometimes refer to as ARPA, and it required all of the states to run programs known as child care stabilization programs. In Virginia, we were a few steps ahead. Many of you had already received funding either from DSS or through VCF from either the CARES or other grant programs, but this was a federal program that was required across all 50 of the states. Virginia received just over $480 million. And the purpose of these dollars, all of the states were told that they needed to cut checks directly to childcare providers, with the goal being we wanted to stabilize programs. We knew that with additional safety requirements, with a really tough market, with some of the challenges related to the staffing crisis, that the industry was still in crisis and needed funds for stability. We wanted to directly help many of you address those staffing challenges, whether it's increasing your base compensation or thinking about things like incentives and bonuses. We wanted to help you, and the intent of the program was to make strategic investments in your programs, everything from ventilation to kind of new materials and supplies. And in Virginia in particular, we wanted to encourage programs, if they were not already, or to reward you if you were, for participating in our child care subsidy program. And you probably over the course of the last few years hear me talk about this, but we saw real drops in participation during the pandemic. We went from about 20,000 kids down to 15,000 kids, and we wanted to bring the program back. That was really important to us, and we needed your help in doing this. We also said we would continue to focus on those providers and those families who were furthest from opportunity, and really looking at how we would make sure that those in the greatest need would receive more resources. Next slide, please. So there was a grant period initially, and you might say, you're talking about 3 payments now, and today you mentioned a 4th one, but initially we were only able to commit to 3 payments. We said that the program would be structured in terms of 3 payments, roughly quarterly over the course of the year, starting in November 2021. And we said we would take applications through March 2022. So kind of a relatively short period of time that would enable to get the dollars out quickly. And we did it in staggered payments. So it wouldn't be just kind of like one huge lump sum at the beginning, but would be distributed over time. We had to set up an official grant period, which was from September 21 to May 2022, but there is tons of flexibility in when you use these dollars. And so really you could sort of account for sort of allowable uses going all the way back to January of 2020, and that there's no deadline to spend the funds. So when we talk a little bit at the end about some of the allowable expenses, you remember that you have a very long duration of which to spend these dollars. And all of this was really intended to get dollars to you quickly and with the maximum flexibility allowed under federal law. Next slide, please. So where are we today? So roughly just about 440 million was initially earmarked for direct distribution to providers. The remainder is using to run the system, fund the technology, support the technical assistance, and again, additional dollars that go into supporting the child care subsidy program. We launched in November of 2021. So we first found out about the program in March. We spent the summer in partnership with our providers, including our Virginia Promise Provider Advisory Group and others, developing and designing the program to meet your needs. Launched in November, and we had over 2,000 applications that came in the first day alone, which was really a sign for us and for our partners like VCF on the really dire need out in the field. To date, we are very excited to note that we have pushed out already $382 million directly in your hands, with roughly about 168 million of those funds going to home-based providers and $214 million to child care centers. So that was really important to get these dollars out in as fast a fashion as possible, while always also being careful to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. We also took some lessons learned from the CARES and the previous grants, and really wanted to make sure we had the right balance. We had heard previously that that per capita family child care had felt like they had received less than some of our centers in prior rounds, and so made some real adjustments to account for that. We also accounted for the community in which you were operating. So if you were operating in what was considered a vulnerable community or low-income community, you received kind of an adjustment based on that, knowing that those communities were also the communities that were hardest hit by the pandemic. And as noted before, we gave you a bonus if you either joined or were already a part of our child care subsidy program, because we needed to make sure that there were enough options, slots, seats, whatever you call it, across the state, as we wanted to increase the participation in our child care subsidy program. And so just over 2,500 of you received bonuses, which were worth 20% of your potential award, your 3-payment award, totaling just under $40 million there. So pretty significant chunk of change has gone out so far. Huge thanks to the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation, who helped us actually cut those checks and work with Bill.com to get you the money. We know it was bumpy along the way. We know there were lots of questions, and it was a brand new online portal that didn't work all the time and occasionally sent you strange emails. But all in all, we're really pleased that we've been able to get out so much money and in relatively quick fashion for state government. Next slide, please. This also just gives you a sense of the different types of programs that were included. And sometimes you'll hear the department talk about childcare and people will assume it's just, your large childcare centers. Really important to note, if you look at this chart, and for those of you who are calling in, we'll make sure you can get these slides afterwards, but an incredible diversity of providers, from our licensed centers to our license exempt centers to our licensed family day homes, and then our license exempt family day homes. That's a local ordinance, voluntarily registered, but we know that families rely on all different types of childcare providers in the Commonwealth, and we wanted to make sure that all were included and part of the Child Care Stabilization Grant. You also see on the right-hand column, within each of these areas, we have our child care subsidy kids are located across all of our programs, right? So some of our child care subsidy participants are served in family day homes, some in centers. Really important that we are inclusive of all of you. And roughly just under sort of 5,000 total applications, and roughly half of you are part of our child care subsidy program, and really important, again, as we continue to serve those kids and families who are furthest from opportunity. Next slide, please. So you do the math, you say, well, this is a 3-round program, but it looked like you spent a little bit less than was fully allocated. And so we're really excited to announce today, there will likely be a press release either later today or tomorrow saying that there's still some funds available. You might say, well, how did you do this? Why didn't you send it all out in the first time? And you'll remember where we were a year ago when we had to make estimates. We had to guess how many programs might be eligible, what might they be eligible for. And so we wanted to be careful, right? We didn't want to make a commitment to providers that we would give you this amount of money and not be able to follow through on that commitment. So we were a little bit conservative just to make sure. We would see how many people applied first. We'd make sure we would follow through on that commitment to you. And what we said was at the time, if there are additional dollars, well, we'll turn around and we'll bring those right back to you. And you'll notice this is still a fairly small percentage of the overall funding available. So we do have additional dollars. It is far less than any of the prior rounds. So again, if you think about if $380 million have gone out over 3 rounds, right? That means that each of those rounds has been over $100 million. And this is roughly half of that, right? Sort of realistically, but our goal is to get it out to you as soon as we had run the numbers on the 3rd round and we realized what we would have left over. Our goal is now to provide one final round of funding to everybody who's eligible. So there's still a small difference between that and the total amount. And we also will use these next few months as a wrap-up period. So if you say, I haven't gotten my bonus yet, I'm dealing with a case where my multiplier was off, or there's an issue with my check, don't worry, we still have a small set aside of money to make sure we can resolve every last issue. And I know more recently there's been some customer service concerns for which we are very apologetic, but we will make sure that we sort of adjust all of those payments, get everything squared away as we move into this wrap up or final period. So that's the good news. We're really excited that we do have more resources to be able to provide to you. And what I'm going to talk about next is what that actually means for you. So here's our plan for redistributing those remaining funds. And then again, as a reminder, and I should have said these earlier, all of these are one-time funds. They're not recurring. They don't come year over year. So our goal has been, as always, is to get them out in your hands as long as it's within the allowable federal uses, to continue to provide you the utmost flexibility allowable under federal law. So the fastest and sort of most efficient way to get these dollars out to you is to basically to allow us to just run the numbers. So nobody's going to need to apply again. We know that that had its difficulties if you sort of think back to November of last year. So if you have already received a payment, so if you received a third quarter payment and you are active in the system, in the child care licensing system, doesn't mean you're licensed, but whatever your status was, or it's voluntarily registered or whatever those things, you remain in good standing with licensing and you're open, then you will receive an additional payment. It might be your fourth round, depending on you applied, it might be your second round, but you will receive an additional payment. If you are closed, whether it's permanently closed, or if you say you're still sort of temporarily closed due to COVID-19, maybe you've never reopened, you will not receive a redistribution payment. So again, these payments are focused on folks who received a third quarter payment, are active in their kind of registration status or licensing status, are in good standing, are open, right? Because we're really at this point in the recovery needing to make sure that we have as many slots as possible to serve kids across the Commonwealth.
And Jenna, this is probably a good slide to pause for a minute and let me ask a few questions that come in. Can new centers apply?
No, this is the March deadline was the ultimate sort of deadline for the program, based in large part on the federal restrictions around when people had to be open and to be kind of considered eligible for this.
All right, thank you. If you become a subsidy vendor, will there be a bonus?
Likely, if you did not become a subsidy vendor by the time of the final deadline, you will not be eligible. You are certainly welcome to email us and explain the details of when you became a subsidy vendor, and we can look into it. But the March deadline was really the deadline for both to get into the program and to become a subsidy vendor.
All right. And a question, could you explain what you mean by in good standing?
Yes, so this applies to the vast majority of programs. We have a very, very small number of programs where, for instance, you are in sort of a serious conversations with us about operating. And again, this is, you would know if you're in this situation, but you're either in some form of consent agreement with us because of multiple violations, or we're having conversations with you because of like multiple health and safety violations. But again, I can probably count the number of programs that are in that bucket on less than two hands. So it's really just, are you not in that status, which should be the vast majority of you.
All right. And one more before I let you move on. What about schools that regularly close in the summer? Will they still receive a payment? Are they considered temporarily closed?
That's a great question in terms of the open and available to serve. Yes, I mean, if you received a third quarter payment and you will sort of be open, and I'm assuming again, the timing here is probably fairly fortuitous. If you will be open and serving kids again within the next sort of 4 to 6 weeks, then I think you would count as open and as available. If it is longer than that, if you are gonna be sort of, for example, closed through the rest of this year, no. But again, if you are on a sort of a temporary break for the summer, but are otherwise open and available, and have sort of kids enrolled for the late summer, fall, should be fine.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. These are all great questions. Thank you, Kathy. And we will put up an email address at the end. I mean, I think again, as as we've worked very closely with you over the course of the last year now, I know that there are always unique circumstances anytime you have something that involves 5,000 small businesses and nonprofits and organizations and mom and pop operators across the state. You might have an exceptional circumstance, and you can always email us at that email address. We'll make sure you have the right email address. It sounds like there's been a little bit of confusion on what is the right number or email address, but that email address is the best way to let us know the special circumstances of your situation. All right, next slide, please. So, as I noted before, on the one hand, we are very, very excited that we're able to get more dollars to you so that we can get out all the funds really sort of in less than a year. On the other hand, I want to be very real with everybody around, again, if each of the prior rounds was over $100 million, we're talking about roughly half of that. So providers who are eligible based on the kind of the criteria that I just presented on the prior slide can anticipate receiving a sort of a fourth or final round distribution. You should think of like what you received as your third quarter, roughly half of that. So again, what you were sort of slated to receive or what you actually received for the third quarter, imagine that you will get roughly half of that. There's one really important exception to that. If your subsidy bonus or there was a correction in your third quarter, we're not going to kind of account for the subsidy bonus. The subsidy bonus is separate. So if you did happen to receive your subsidy and the bonus in the third quarter, take out your subsidy bonus, look at what just your third quarter payment would be, and imagine sort of or estimate about half of that. So that'll come out. We are not, in order to get these dollars out expeditiously to folks, we've kind of run numbers and made estimates. So there's not a lot of room for making adjustments. So whether it's your capacity has changed or your full or part-time operating have changed, like unfortunately, for the most part, we're not going to make adjustments. Because of the amount of the money and the need to get it out quickly, we're going to run it really based on where you were as of the third quarter. And so I think it's really important to note. Again, if you have an extraordinary circumstance, which you need to let us know about, don't hesitate to email. But for the most part, and this is really important so we don't run out of money as we hit the very bottom of the bucket here, or the end of the piggy bank, that we're going to run these numbers and cut these checks roughly based on where you were for your third quarter payment. Next slide, please. So we are going to continue to partner with our fabulous partners at VECF who have helped us get these dollars to you for nearly a year now. We will process them. Again, we're processing several thousand payments again, so this will take a little bit of time. You do not need to apply. Let me say that again, and hopefully Kathy, you'll also ask me that, but you do not need to reapply. I know folks have been going onto the portal wondering, how do I reapply? But you do not need to reapply. We will go into the system, we will process the payments, and you will receive your final round via the same mechanism. So if you got direct deposit for your third quarter payment, you will get direct deposit. If you got a paper check for your third quarter payment, you will get a paper check. So the same mechanism that you had for the third quarter. Now that does affect your timeline. So if it's direct deposit, as we move through, approve, send the information in batches over to VCF, your direct deposit comes about 2 weeks after approval, right? So again, remember, we're staggering these. We got to put our eyes on everyone, make sure that folks are open and good standing. Shouldn't take a lot of time, but there is just a bit of processing that's needed. And then we send it over to VCF in batches, and then the direct deposit comes a little bit more quickly. Paper checks can take up to 6 to 8 weeks to arrive in the mail. And I know that we hear huge variation. There are places where the Postal Service gets it to you in a matter of no time, and there's other places where we know it takes longer. So we would ask for you to give us a bit of patience here. It will be coming. We will make sure that every last check gets there. And again, I mentioned earlier the wrap-up period. So even after this, if for some reason you don't get your check, we will address it, but it will take a little time to get out, sort of roughly 4,000 more checks. Next slide, please. All right. So next steps, unless Kathy, let me pause there and see if there's any questions before we jump into the next steps.
There are, let me see if there's some that make sense to answer now. We have a number of questions of folks who feel like they have not received their third quarter payment yet. Will they still receive their third quarter payment and be eligible for this fourth? And also a number of folks who are saying they have not been able to access the grant portal.
Sure. So yes, if you're eligible for and have not received your third quarter, we will certainly look into that, right? And again, as I noted before, we've got some held aside for wrap up to kind of chase down for every individual case what's going on. Was there a check that was cut and sent via mail? You never got it. We need to cancel and reissue. So we will, if you're eligible, and that's what we'll need to look into. If you're eligible for the third quarter and somehow didn't receive, or you just never got the physical check, we are committed and we have funds set aside to make sure that we can follow up on each of those. I think the best thing to do is to email us. I will say, we're probably going to get, a bunch of emails today. And so we'll work with the team. I know we're meeting today and tomorrow to kind of make sure that we're addressing the sort of extensive set of emails. We still have our full team here at the DOE who will be responding, and we will make sure over the course of the next week or so to kind of move through any emails that come through. So it won't be at sort of super fast right now based on what we will see coming in, but we will follow up. And if you're eligible for the third payment, make sure you get that and then account for that with a sort of a final payment as well. And again, if you're having portal issues, we've had some confusion with some of the help information listed on the portal. So the best thing to do right now is to use our email address, which we'll show in a second. If there's some question or kind of important thing that you need from us, we worked with the technology vendors, and for some reason they had a wrong number up there, and we're trying to address that because we know that some of you have had it ring and ring and ring and not pick up, or have not had people get back to you.
Okay. And I'm going to ask Anna or someone on my team to drop the address of the email address, because lots of folks are asking how they ask questions about their particular situation. We'll ask them to be patient and getting a response, but they'd appreciate knowing that email address.
And then Anna also made a note, and I wanted to note this, that we also have some, I know we'd asked about, Kathy had asked about sort of schools who might be sort of not open, like not sort of serving kids right now because they're on sort of a summer break, but are going to open this fall. The other one is if you were a summer program who applied, you would also be included. So.
And Jenna, I think folks are getting it and appreciating that they don't need to reapply to get this fourth payment. If they received a third, they'll automatically be issued a check. Will they receive any kind of notification, email or otherwise, about receipt of the check?
So I think that what we'll have to do is, I see Anna just put the host in there. It will ultimately be updated in the portal. I don't want to speak too prematurely. We're still working out with our tech vendors exactly kind of when that will happen. Is it at the moment of cutting or approval? So the portal will ultimately be your best place to find out the information about your status. But again, it's going to take us a little time. We wanted to kind of announce today, it's going to take us a little time to process these. So don't, it's not going to show up on the portal tomorrow, but that'll be the place to go. And what we will probably do, and I'll ask my colleagues at the VDOE to do this, is once we have kind of substantively started processing, or we want to direct people to check out the portal. Some of you remember what you'll sometimes get those email listservs from us that might say, go check the portal or to do that. So you can expect some notice from us once we've approved or substantive number of these are moving through.
We have a number of folks asking about if they have changed or are in the process of changing banks. Would they go to the portal to update the information? How would they make those changes?
That actually might stump me, Kathy, in terms of the sort of the relationship between us and you on the bill.com.
Mhm.
So, what I would say is if you need to change a bank, you should certainly let us know that so we can reach out to you. I think it is through bill.com. So if you have a bill.com account and you know how to change it, you can do it directly in there. If you don't, you should email us. However, do not send us your bank account information in that email.
Yeah.
So again, if you are direct deposit and your bank account information has changed and you know how to log into bill.com, you can do it directly in bill.com. If you're
So that's-
unsure about that or need some sort of technical assistance there, you should email us, but you just need to say that your bank account has changed, but please do not at any point in time send bank account information to the Department of Ed.
That's right, Jenna, to go directly to bill.com with that information. Also, if you want to change from check to direct deposit, you should also be able to do that in bill.com as well. Okay, let's see. So all inquiries about special circumstances can be sent to the email address that was just dropped in the link. Let's see. There's some questions about allowable spending, allowable expenditures and or, expenditures that are absolutely not allowed. I don't know if you're going to cover that later, Jenna, or if we want to.
Yeah, I will. I'll do that right before we shift to Vanessa. So if we could hold that.
Okay.
question.
All right, we'll do that.
Excellent.
If folks are on a 1-year or probationary license, are they still eligible to receive the fourth payment?
That is a good question. Again, we'd have to, if you've not received a payment so far, you're not part of the system, likely no. If you have already received 1, 2, or 3 payments and you received a third quarter payment and you're still in good standing, if it's on a probational license, the answer should be yes.
Okay.
And I know we've had folks who have become part of the Virginia system since this program started. And I just want to remind people that the law, the federal law, so it wasn't a state decision, the federal law had some very specific rules about programs having to originally be open quite a while before or sort of take subsidy. But so there's just there's quite a set of rules, both in terms of when you opened and when you took subsidy that, or you agreed to participate in the subsidy program, that do affect your eligibility. And some of that was required by the federal law, was not our choice.
All righty. Will the amount be counted as taxable income?
Yes, all of this is, I believe, taxable income.
All righty. There are lots more questions. But
Although I should say, right, Kathy and I've learned this the hard way. We are not prepared to ever give advice. So the message is from the feds that this is taxable, but please don't consider that as accounting advice, and you should always speak to a tax professional.
Thank you. I think we'll let you proceed, and then we'll have more questions for you.
Absolutely great. All right, so where do we go here? So as noted, we are going to update the award letter, sort of summarizing all your payments, and we'll post that to the ARPA Provider portal, and we'll send an update kind of once those are there. So you don't need to feel like you need to sort of start checking every day. Starting tomorrow. It'll take us a little while because we're talking about, several thousand letters here, but we will get everybody their updated award letter. We expect this will take a little while to get out. So our goal is to get everything approved, checks cut, direct dollars going to you by October 1st. So if you don't receive something by October 1st, That's really when you should notify us. If you have a special circumstance and you're concerned about a third quarter payment or something else, feel free to email us sooner. But again, it's going to take us a while, and I want to be very direct and open about timing here, that we expect to kind of have all of this wrapped up and all of the checks out by October 1st of this year. And then we are asking for your help and making sure that if you receive a paper check, that you are cashing it. So we continue to have this challenge across the board. Not a lot of you, but some of you just, whether you've not deposited the check. Now, it sounds like some of you may never received the check. So if you have a check that you think is missing, please email us now. If you have a check that's sort of sitting in a file somewhere, in a wallet, please cash that. And if you receive a paper check for this final round, please get that deposited into a bank or financial institution by November 30th. As I said before, we need to wrap up these dollars. There's a whole bunch of things that we have to do in order to comply with all of the rules of the federal government as well. And we need for folks to cash deposit all of the checks that have come through this program. And if you were supposed to receive a paper check at any point in the process and you think that check literally got lost in the mail, please email us. Because if you email us in December to say, hey, I think my check from 9 months ago got lost, at that point, it will be much more difficult for us to resolve that than now. So if you think there's a third quarter check that you haven't received, that you believe was cut and sent, please email us so that we can chase that down. But we are not going to reissue checks after November 30th of this year in order to do kind of final reconciliation as required by the federal law. Next slide, please. So the last piece, and this is just a reminder, and you've heard me talk about this before, and Vanessa is going to go into more detail about how to think about using these dollars, but it's a little bit of a unique program. On the one hand, it provides a ton of flexibility. On the other hand, I know that for some folks, that's made them a little bit nervous about, well, like, how are you going to, if you monitor me, if you check with me, like, how do I even sort of think about making sure I've kind of followed these flexible rules? So the key reminder is you need to keep documentation on how you spent these dollars for the next 5 years. The approved uses are all listed out and the appendices, but you have to be able to say, well, here's what I spent it on. And it means you just have to kind of choose like what you spent it on, because there was a whole bunch of allowable uses from personnel to this and to that, but you just need to be able to demonstrate how you use those dollars. We will work with an independent consulting firm this year to start to check with you, right? We'll reach out, we'll say, hey, you received this amount of money. What did you use it for? What kind of records do you have? We've got to do that again as part of the federal law. Our intent is just to make sure that we're crossing every T and dotting every I. I mean, again, when we look at the economic situation of the industry, we have no doubt that these dollars were desperately necessary and that you could have used them in 6 different ways. And what we're going to try to do is work with this consulting firm to just make sure that we get everybody to a place where they can clearly point to, well, here are the dollars I received, and here's how I use them. And in partnership with the consulting firm, as well as with VCF, we'll continue to provide technical assistance and resources. And again, I know Vanessa just added a spending guide to the chat, and she's going to talk a little bit more about resources, but just helping you think through, okay, here's how much I got, here's how I used it, here's how I document that on those kind of key steps. And if you still got dollars that you haven't used, I know that's not a lot of you, how might you think about strategically using those dollars now? Next slide, please. So let me bounce back to Kathy, or actually, Kathy, if we can go to the next slide, please. There's the email address, although I know we've put it in there. And if we go one more, I think the email address is in the chat. There's then 2 pages that include all of the approved uses for funding. So again, wages and benefits, wages, compensation, such a big piece of your bottom line. Probably most of you could have spent that and then some in terms of your relief dollar. Rent, utilities, sort of some, as described here, non-capital facility maintenance and improvements, particularly if you did things for social distancing, your insurance, your utility payments. So again, the point of this grant was to keep you operating. We know most of you reported having higher operating costs to us, and that you reported that you barely broke even or didn't make money last year. Any sort of rent or utility or insurance or kind of payroll that wasn't paid for by kind of another relief fund would count for this. So it doesn't have to be just the increase in operating costs. Really, you're able to use any of the operating costs to kind of account for or document your uses here. So the vast majority of your bottom line is probably eligible. It's just a matter of kind of documenting that and sort of saying, here's when that started, here's when that's ended. Next slide, please. And then there's a few other things, again, if there's anything related to equipment, PPE, masks, sort of cleaning materials, any of those things, absolutely allowable. If you had to purchase, whether it's software, whether it was, outdoor stuff like picnic tables, any of the material goods that you need for regular operations. You've got diapers, you've got food, you've got toys and books, any of that. Again, this was a stabilization fund. So your day-to-day costs are allowable if they fall in the category of goods and services, compensation, utilities, rent, insurance, and then if there was any kind of mental health services. So these are the allowed uses by the federal government. We hope that, nearly all of these are applicable to you all. And again, I want to just sort of say this one more time. It doesn't have to be sort of cost explicitly related or higher because of COVID. Your general operating costs, these funds were intended to help you meet those, noting that those have gone up significantly in the last year. And many of you operated with fewer kids at point or lost revenue because folks opted out for a while. So again, some of the most sort of basic but critically important uses, all allowable under the federal government. All right, with that, Kathy, let me pause and see what other questions you have for me and the team.
Still some questions about from folks who have not yet received their third quarter payment and wondering, will they receive that? And then will they also be eligible for the fourth? How, should they notify DOE? What would you recommend?
Yes, if you have not received your third quarter payment and you think you were eligible, you need to email us.
All righty. And some have been have received a provisional license, still operating. Are they still eligible to receive the?
Yes, if you are otherwise eligible under all the criteria you reserved third payment, your sort of license is still in good standing, not expired, you should be eligible.
All right, thank you. Similarly, subsidy vendor bonus, is that, can folks still receive that if they have not yet received it? Can they still apply for it?
No, you can no longer apply for it. If you think that you indicated that you were a subsidy vendor before March and have not received it, you should email us. But if you just became a subsidy vendor last week, the same is true if your enrollment changed or your capacity changed or your neighborhood changed. Like, we are not making adjustments for the fourth round for any of those things.
Okay, thank you.
And I saw this question, there's not going to be an additional subsidy bonus, nor will the bonus go up. The 20% for the first was really based on your first 3 rounds or your first sort of whatever you were eligible for. So there's no new subsidy bonuses at this point in time.
Okay. And what about those of us who've applied and done everything for subsidy by the deadline, March 1st, but have not received final approval? We just keep being told they're backed up.
Yes. in that case, I know we're still working through a small number of those. So we are still working on those, and you should email us.
All right. Are you still eligible for the fourth grant if you did not apply for the third quarter grant?
So if you were, we probably need to look in that case, but you didn't need to apply for the third if you had been determined eligible for the first or the second. You'll remember it was an automatic application, which sort of logically meant that you would have, if you hadn't received anything prior, you would have needed to apply for the third. But again, you can email us, but if you have never received a payment, if you're a brand new center, you're not eligible.
What is the period in which these payments can be spent?
So this is what's very complicated. They can go back to January of 2020, according to the federal law, and there's no deadline. So this is what, again, folks are saying, well, how can that be? So we are encouraging you, if you have allowable expenses now, if this helps you cover your payroll, you should say it covered my payrolls from this date to that date. And that's your kind of documented piece. But if you say, well, it's too much to cover my payroll for the last 3 months, you can continue to sort of run it forward. But it goes back to January of 2020 and there's no deadline.
Okay. We've had a few folks say that they're serving more children, and what if the number of children being served has changed since they first applied?
It doesn't matter. It was initially based on capacity, not enrollment, and we're not making any adjustments at this time.
Okay.
Great question though.
All righty. Looking at the approved uses for funding, tuition is not on there. So are we not able to use this funding to cover the difference of BDSS copays not being charged or collected?
I think separately there was something about supporting programs to do that. I want to double check, but I think that is allowable in terms of reducing the payments for people.
Okay. For the portal, could you just state again, and we have some folks who joined late because they initially weren't able to get in because we had reached our maximum capacity. When can they count on the portal having updated information?
Yeah, I think what we're going to do there, just so folks know, is what we will do is we will make sure that it's updated, and then we will send a notice either via the portal or via when you kind of get something from the Office of Health and Safety, right? Some of the ways we send out like the COVID guidance or other things via an email from us telling you to check the portal.
All right, lots of questions about, allowable uses of the funds. I think you, made that fairly clear. We might want to go back to that. Was there a slide with some?
Oh yeah. Go forward, I think 2. Other direction. There we go.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll help folks who are asking. And if you have specific questions that are not covered here, I think Vanessa may point you to some resources where there's some additional information, or you can use the help email.
Absolutely. And the one thing I want to say this again, because I'm sort of scrolling through some of the questions and seeing this is, folks are saying, well, can I use it for normal payroll? If I'm a family child care provider, can I pay myself? Like, absolutely. Like the one exception would be ages ago, if you got something like the PPP, you don't want to kind of say that, you used, sort of both sources to pay for the same thing. But for the majority of the time period of this grant and going forward, remember, there's no limit in the future, you can just use this for these very basic operational costs. And I almost want to say, like, don't overthink this, right? Like, if you're, if you can use it for wages, if you can use it for rent, if you can use it for insurance payments, like the big items that are part of your budget, you're highly encouraged to do that. That's not at all concerning. These are stabilization grants, which mean they were kind of intended to stabilize that. And if you can account for these dollars to take care of that, and some of the revenue dollars or the subsidy dollars you receive, kind of you can hold, you can sort of save those in the bank. But you should, the key thing is it's more of an accounting exercise, but know that the very basic things, even though it almost sounds too basic to be true, those are all allowable expenses, and we encourage people to kind of keep it simple, as you say.
All righty. And again, for folks who've just joined, there is no need to reapply. If you received earlier checks and received a third payment check, you can expect that you will automatically be issued a payment for the fourth payment, which will be about half of the amount of the third payment. And the time frame for that is we anticipate beginning to issue checks later this month, and it just takes the usual amount of time to process thousands of checks and for those checks to be delivered in the mail or direct deposited.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kathy, Anna on my team just confirmed that tuition assistance is allowable. So that's certainly allowable.
Excellent, thank you. Jenna asked, a few folks are asking, will there be grants in the future? And what about the, viable costs and expenses that folks are, concerned about, in the months to come?
Absolutely. No, and that's a great question. So as it stands right now, there are no additional funds slotted for direct cash assistance. Altogether, we think, between the CARES grant and the prior grants and this one, it represents just over $660 million that have gone out to Virginia child care providers. And we know that that's been so important over the course of the last 2 years. But we have really sort of maximized and used all of the dollars that were expected to be sort of towards direct cash assistance. We in Virginia are trying to make sure that we get every relief dollar out on the timeline, that nothing goes back to DC or to the federal government. But our shift now is really focusing on standing up and sort of supporting our child care subsidy program, really focused on getting those rates to be more on par with the costs of operating. And so some of you may have heard me speak recently at a public hearing about rate increases. We've been working very closely with child care and family child care programs across the state to figure out how to get subsidy rates that are closer to the costs to operate, as you're now kind of part of the statewide measurement and improvement system. And so we expect to spend many, many more millions of dollars in our subsidy program to continue to make childcare affordable for more Virginia kids and families. And we want more programs to participate in subsidy, programs that participate in subsidy and be a part of VQB5, that teachers might be eligible for incentives. We are seeking to address some of the challenges around applying and becoming part of it, and most importantly, getting the rates right. So I know somebody spoke about the difference between what they have to charge and what subsidy pays, and right now that's an enormous gap, and we're trying to really significantly close that while also making co-payments available, co-payments more affordable for families. So we're still very serious about investing every last relief dollar. We actually had the chance to speak with some congressional staffers this week about how critical these dollars are, but really shifting at this point to a focus on getting the rates right for child care subsidy and sort of a long-term sustainability strategy for supporting those programs that serve Virginia's most vulnerable kids and families. I should also note one last point to Kathy too, is some of you may be aware, we've pushed up the income limits to the maximum available under federal law. We've tried to make it easier to apply. Families can now apply if they're looking for a job. So we're also trying to make it easier for you to serve subsidy families by making more and more Virginia families eligible for subsidy, while also fixing to address these rates, which will go into effect in October, to make the subsidy program work better for providers as well as work better for families.
Thank you, Jenna. There's, many more questions, a lot of appreciation for the grants. And I'll just remind folks, even especially those who joined late, you will receive the slides and a recording of the presentation after the event. So you'll be able to have access to all of the information. Many of these questions that have come through are answered in the information provided by Jenna or with the links and email addresses offered. And we're going to just take a few minutes to ask Vanessa to review some of the additional information and resources available to providers. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you, Kathy.
Hi, everybody. This is Vanessa. I'm going to share my screen quickly. And we're going to look at some resources that are available to you and are related to your ARPA funds. Okay, so let's take a look. First, I'd like to say it's such an honor to talk with everyone today. You all out there doing this work are really my favorite people in the world. And so just wanted to, communicate that respect and just how excited I am to be part of this conversation with you all today. We really are, wanting to encourage folks to use, this final and fourth payment to really invest in your business. And, to think strategically about how you're going to use this last portion of money. And, let's all be so happy, oh my gosh, that there is a little bit more money. I mean, that's very exciting in and of itself. So if you come to the VECF website, you will be able to access resources that we have worked with DOE to produce. And so I'm showing you that screen here, and you'll see that we're looking at ARPA resources. And so that is this page. It has English. It also has Spanish. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit to show you some of the options here. So again, these are really kind of focused on, giving you ideas for spending wisely, for investing, and some of the resources are very related to, what is allowable, what are ideas for spending. Jenna mentioned payroll, bonuses. We know there is a huge staffing crisis right now. So, thinking about pay increases, bonuses, those incentives, is absolutely part of using your funds. And so if we click on this first icon or the line here, explore childcare business guides and videos, those are some really key pieces that are designed, especially for you to be kind of quick reads or watch the video and get some answers, some good information, and we'll take a look at what some of those topics are. And then I'm just going to show you real quick, some of these other opportunities. There is free business coaching. How great is that? And so you may go through a guide or watch a video and think, well, gosh, I have a question about calculating my time and space for the use of my home as a family childcare program. And, I want to get that calculation right because I'm going to take it off my taxes and I'm going to use my grant funding toward it. And so you may want to, reach out and get some free business coaching. That's one-on-one, and it's a business expert. And so, I know I would take advantage of that because it's just a really great chance to get that coaching. You can also just type in a question if you read a guide, or you are looking over, this maybe recording of this webinar and you aren't able to ask a question live, you can go to the business experts and type in a question in addition to using that email address that Anna and Jenna have shared, which is specific about the stabilization grants. This line is going to take you to childcareva.com, which is a super helpful website. Lots of great information there. If you're thinking about joining the subsidy program, which we always promote, that's a good place to go to learn more information. And then we've got some Wonder School info here at the bottom of the screen as well, and we'll come back and take a look at that. So I just want to kind of walk you all through some of the resources because they are really nice. So if you click on that line to go to the videos and the guides, it brings you here, and you'll see that you can change this to Spanish if you'd like. All of the guides are in English and Spanish, and so are the videos. You can always access the free coaching really easily from this page as well. And if we scroll down, we're going to see some of our goodies. So, all of these options for learning, for quick learning, very consumable, on demand, anytime you've got a minute. We know all of your minutes are very precious. So, these are designed to be, pretty quick and user friendly. So you can see a lot of our topics here. Such good stuff. If you're thinking about, yeah, how do I financially reward my staff? That's going to go into, a temporary pay increase versus, a permanent pay increase versus back pay versus bonuses, attracting and retaining staff, something I know everybody has, at the forefront of their minds right now. We've got an expansion checklist. If you're thinking about growing your business, what are some steps that you would want to walk through? The tax season stuff is awesome. And then, I think I mentioned that time and space calculation. If you're a family childcare owner operator, do not miss that because that is money in the bank right there. And then some of the really basic ones, like opening a business bank account. Yes, you want to pay yourself, and that is totally allowable, and you should be doing it. And so that'll walk you through, how do you do that? How do you make it work? So lots of great info. As I said, gosh, you guys can tell I'm excited. So this one is really the biggie, and this is the one that I put in a link. This documenting expenses and grant spending strategies. Everybody go, come to the webpage and download this one because it's super. It's going to outline for you, all of these ideas for spending. Some very super practical things like you needed to get a new kiddie toilet versus you needed a dishwasher for sanitizing things, or maybe you needed a new playground. And then things too, like, maybe the multicultural puzzle set that you wanted forever and never, it wasn't in the budget. Now it is. So a lot of ideas in that guide. It's super helpful. And then it's got some really great worksheets too, to help you think about, spending and saving and documenting. So that's one thing that we wanted to mention is that you do want to be documenting your spending of your grant funds. And as Jenna said, that can go all the way back to January of 2020. And so, keep your receipts, take a picture of them, make a file, and we have guides here to walk you through that kind of, record keeping approach and finding a way that really works for you so that if you do get a monitoring call or, you're trying to get ready for one, maybe you're not like, where are all my receipts? So you can have them all in one place, which I know is sometimes not as easy as it sounds. So a lot of great choices here. And so if you click on one, you'll see that the video is right there. So if you prefer a video, you can check that out, or you can scroll down. And all of the content now, and this is a little different, is, right here on the page. So you don't, for most of the guides, you don't have to click anything else. It's all going to be, right here. This one is a download one. If it's a little bit longer, it may be a download, but most of them, it's just text right there on the page. So I think I've probably talked about those enough for now. Just really want to encourage you to check them out. And then I'm going to come back. I want to show you real quick the business coaching. Such a great opportunity. It's free. Again, it's one-on-one. You would just click on that line and then, you can choose English or Spanish, and then you just pick your date and the request goes in and you're able to get signed up for that coaching. So that is a wonderful resource. And again, we mentioned asking the question, we mentioned childcareva.com, lots of great info. And then Wonder School, I just want to do a little plug for Wonder School real quick. This is really a value for family day homes and smaller centers. And it's it's a childcare management solution. It's online and it's meant to support your business, processes and help you kind of streamline and save time, money, and energy because we know that everybody out there needs to save those things. And so they will help you set up your website. They can help you, boost enrollment. You can schedule tours online. You can set up the app so that families in your program can get daily updates from you, and they can do check-in and check-out with the app. And you can also do auto billing, and parents want that, right? So that's a marketing tool, probably, if you're able to set that up. And so what happens is if you are interested in Wonder School, and I'm just going to click on the little flyer here. You can look at this info. It talks through, some of the benefits. You can fill out this form and submit it, or there is, you can text to Wonder School and they will get your info that way. And then what happens next is that you will get a welcome email, and then you can have an onboarding session. So we've got a dedicated team of Wonder School folks in Virginia. So we've got Renee and we've got Megan and we've got Jessica who does Spanish support. And so, they'll send you a welcome email. They will onboard you. They will provide training. They will come to you and sit with you and, show you all of the ropes. Or they'll Zoom, or they'll text, or they'll call, and they really just want to, help folks use these tools. The other thing with Wonder School is you can just use one part of it. If there's a certain feature to the product that you're really interested in, like you're like, I want, to digitize attendance. I want to do this check-in and check out. Or if you're feeling like, I really want the auto billing and auto pay, you can get with them and just, kind of pick and choose what options work best for you, and then maybe explore some of the others if you like. So that is about Wonder School. And I think those are most of the things that I wanted to mention. Of course, Jenna, please jump in if there are other things that we want to cover here, or Kathy. We just really want you to know that these tools are here for you and that we are here for you. And we think about you all every day, and we appreciate that you are growing our very futures in so many ways. And that what you do is so important. And we've got your backs. And we're working for you every day. So I think that's about it for me. We can look at questions. I guess I'll stop sharing so we can go back to there we go.
Thank
Go
you,
back to our
Vanessa.
PowerPoint.
I think we still have a good number of questions for Jenna if she's still available. I think folks appreciated the information about the resources, but I don't see many of the questions relating to the resources. Here's one. Will business coaches be able to help develop pro formas for potential expansion of sites?
Did you say performance?
Pro forma. So if they're looking for a business plan to expand their sites, would you recommend the business coaches?
Yep, they do have access to lots of templates online, and they've got answers about all of those topics. You bet.
Thank you, Vanessa. Really
You bet.
appreciate that.
Thank you all.
And Jenna, lots of questions remaining for you. I see you've been busily trying to answer many of them. Are there some that you've seen that you'd like to try to address?
So a big one, and I know we've had a few people join, and I'm so glad that everybody is here. So a couple of big ones. If you received a third payment and you're still eligible, you're open, you are in good standing, so you're not in kind of, in a consent agreement with the Office of Health and Safety, then you are eligible. You do not need to apply. We will go ahead and process all of these through the portal. We will post a final award letter that will let you know exactly what you're eligible for, but roughly it's about 50% or half of your third quarter base payment. So it doesn't, no subsidy, bonuses, either sort of retrospectively or going forward. We will notify everybody via email when the letters are posted. So you don't need to kind of check the portal every day. We will send out a blast email. I see from many of our family childcare providers this question around, can I use this to account for paying myself? Absolutely. You know, your compensation is completely an allowable expense. And I know that many of you didn't make money last year or barely broke even. And so addressing your compensation or giving yourself a bonus is absolutely allowable and important. If there's anything that changes with your payment status, you need to log on to bill.com and address that. We will offer both direct deposit and paper checks. The paper checks will take longer. So if you want to change that, and again, normal payroll, whether you're a family childcare provider paying yourself or whether you're paying your teachers, normal payroll is an allowable expense. So again, normal payroll, normal rent, normal utilities, normal insurance, all of that is allowable. I've had a few people ask about capital investments and the difference between facility maintenance and kind of minor renovation versus major renovation and kind of capital costs. I do think this is a place I would encourage people to be careful. Like the law says sort of facility maintenance and improvements are allowable, but you're not supposed to use these dollars for major renovations. And again, you know, if you think that, you know, sort of the general public would interpret something to be a major renovation, I would find another expense to account for it. But maintenance and sort of minor improvements are allowable. So adding a carpet allowable. I think a fence allowable. You start taking down walls, folks, and then I think you start to move into real capital investment. So I'd tread carefully and go back to the basics, using your payroll, using your you know, your rent, your utilities, other pieces. And then tuition assistance, whether that's fully paying for somebody or paying for the difference for somebody or helping somebody with co-payments, all of that is allowable. And a hardship bonus, if you're, you know, again, you're a family child care person, you've worked around the clock for the last 2 years and you want to give yourself a 5% bonus, again, allowable. If you think you should have received a third quarter payment or should have received a subsidy vendor bonus and have not to this date, those are the places where you should email us. We are trying to reconcile or square away all of the last dollars. And as I said, if you're just joining now, we're looking to kind of close the sort of the dollars, no more checks come the end of this calendar year. And so if you think you should have gotten a check, if you have an award letter that says you should have gotten a check and you never actually got that paper check, you never actually cashed that paper check, you've lost that paper check, now is the time to let us know that you've got an issue there. Another question says, why don't new childcare programs get it? And I just want to kind of acknowledge this because I've seen a few folks who recognize this. This is the federal law. The federal law really said that this was intended to help programs directly, immediately affected by COVID-19. And so even though we know the cost to operate right now are higher, we know it's incredibly challenging to find a hire, retain, and keep staff. The federal law really limits who was originally eligible for this and therefore who's eligible for these final payments.
Jenna, I think maybe if we could kind of project for folks when they should expect to receive the fourth payment generally.
Yes, I think you should. I would say somewhere between August 15th, maybe even a little slightly later, and October 1st. So we said if you have no issues, let me sort of say this a different way. If you've received, you know, your rounds of payments previously, already received your subsidy bonus if you're participating, not if you're not, please don't reach out to us until, the late September, early October. It will take a while to kind of move through all of the applications. So you might hear that a neighbor might get theirs right around Labor Day, but we will process through everybody, and we expect that to happen between August 15th and October 1st. It takes a little bit of a while for us to move through, batch over, work with VCF and Bill.com to get everything out to people. So you really, if you don't receive anything and you think you should have after October 1st, then you should email us.
All righty, another question, is the subsidy vendor bonus paid as a separate check, or is it part of the round, an issued payment each round?
Yeah, normally it comes with the first time that you receive dollars for us. If you so it came with another check, it was not separate.
Thank you. When will you ask for an expenses report?
So we'll be setting up a monitoring system with an outside consulting firm. We will, and I saw an important question about this. We will send out some version of a letter contact, sort of what to expect. I know there's plenty of scams and frauds and all that sorts of things out there. So we'll say, here's the firm, here's the company, here you will be selected. It won't necessarily be all providers who are selected for monitoring. So the important message is everybody should have them on file, again, for 5 years. That's the kind of the clear message from the feds. But we are not going to ask everybody to submit them. So I want to let me just sort of repeat that. So you need to have your documentation on file. We will let people know about monitoring once it starts later this year. It will only be a sample of programs, but at any point, you might get monitored. So make sure you have your documentations on file. But there will not be a point that we expect everybody to send everything in. It's only if you are randomly selected for monitoring.
All right, so I'm just going to recap for folks because we're getting a lot of the same questions from earlier in the webinar. If you received a third round check, you do not need to reapply. You will automatically be issued a fourth round payment as long as you are still eligible and meeting the requirements of operating and in good standing. You should expect the fourth round check to be about half of the amount that your third round check was. This is kind of, because of the diligence of DOE and expending over the first 3 rounds an amount that you felt could fully be paid. There is a small balance, and so you're distributing fairly across providers. This is sort of an unexpected bonus round of this fourth payment. You should expect to receive it, we will begin issuing the payments within the coming weeks. And if you have not received a payment by October, you should absolutely reach out to the Department of Education just to make sure that that it's in the works. Anything else that you would add? And if you are listening to the webinar and want to know if you'll receive copies of the slides or the recording, that will be sent out after the event. So you will be able to access all of the information that was provided in this hour-and-a-half event. The monitoring is for all of the ARPA grants over all 4 rounds, correct, Jenna?
Yes, it's not for CARES. It's just for ARPA, Child Care Stabilization.
All right. And we do not anticipate a possibility of another grant for next year.
No, we do not at this time.
All right. We're breaking hearts this afternoon, Jenna, but I think that's the reality of the understanding. Lots of appreciation for the information. How about a lightning round on allowable expenses?
Sure.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Can I add a bathroom to my basement where I do childcare?
again, folks, I think these are very tricky questions that I would talk with, the line is facility maintenance and improvements. If it could be considered a major capital expense or major renovation, it's not allowable. So, depending on the wall structure and all of that, I think if it's at all risky, I'd encourage you to find another allowable expense.
Can we pay taxes from grants money?
I think if it's part of your operating costs, that's allowable.
How can we document lost income? For example, in 2020, our enrollment was less than half due to COVID.
You don't actually need to document lost income. This is not tied to losing income or not. So again, you just need to basically demonstrate how the dollars were used. So if whatever your operating costs are, you can use it for now. And again, remember, you can use it going forward. So if you say, well, I don't feel like I've got enough in compensation now, you can use it for going forward.
Okay. Can I use the grant on payroll payback before COVID when enrollments are low at my daycare?
You said before COVID?
Yes.
No, cannot go. The two major sort of no-nos in terms of allowable expenses are major capital renovations and expenses prior to January of 2020.
All right. Do we also?
I saw another one, Kathy. I think removing carpet, yes. Fencing, carpet,
Mhm.
lighting, ventilation, all of those.
Air conditioning.
My understanding is it's really like you start moving with walls. Like that's
Mhm.
where
That's helpful. That's helpful. Someone wants to know about accounting for the original CARES grant money.
I have not heard anything about that. We'll make sure, and we should remember to mention that when we send out notice about the monitoring, but this is for the stuff that will occur this winter, it will just be on ARPA.
All right. For an organization with multiple childcare sites, do we need to track expenditures specifically by the site, or can we support the overall grant amount at the combined organizational level?
I would encourage you to sort of think about, at least proportionally accounting for it by site. I still think with general operating expenses, you'll be fine. But again, I would make sure that, you can kind of, fully account for it.
Okay.
And then we got a couple more, Kathy. So if you want to do direct deposit or switch from paper check, you need to log into bill.com and do that. And then I saw a really important note. I was sort of saying that folks, it's allowable as compensation, saying that it could be used for family childcare to compensate themselves. Someone on the comments reminded me that everybody should tread carefully in terms of your business operating structure. And so that's an important flag, depending on whether you can pay yourself without your LLC, whether you typically go to the LLC, like neither VCF nor the Virginia Department of Education wants to give legal or accounting advice. So, and I know we've even gotten questions from accountants. So if you're at all concerned, please make sure to talk to a lawyer or an accountant.
Jen, a few people have questions. I think you mentioned, reimbursement rates. How should people stay tuned for more information?
Yeah, I believe we need to post those broadly August 10th. So in about a week or so, and we will send, once that is widely available, we'll use Readiness Connections. I should always do a plug for Readiness Connections. But we will make sure that you can see those. Those will be publicly available, and then those go into effect on October 1st.
Okay. And Jenna, if folks are not familiar with becoming a subsidy vendor but are interested in doing so, where would you direct them?
Absolutely. So You can email our general address, earlychildhood@doe.virginia.gov. You can also go to childcareva.com, and there's a whole set of the application, all the information. So if you're ready to apply now, we would love to have you. Again, I know we've had at times it's been challenging and several steps to becoming a subsidy vendor, and the rates have really been low, particularly in some areas of the state. And so we're trying to address that and fix that. And we really encourage any program that's thinking about it to check out the website, go ahead and apply and become a vendor with us.
All righty. A few more expenditures, rent, groceries, transportation.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay. And I think there's some terrific resources on the ecf.org/ARPA that answer some of the questions about how to calculate and figure out documenting your expenses.
Absolutely.
Are the subsidy rates going to be looked at, I guess, maybe reassessed each year?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So the new language in our state budget says that we need to do a better job of funding providers to meet the costs of quality. And that says we have to do that for the entirety of this 2-year budget. So we've worked really hard with national experts and with folks across the state to come up with these revised numbers that will go into effect on October 1st. And then we're committed to looking at whether it works or not, whether it's enough of an increase or not, and kind of, coming back to that. So we don't know the exact timelines, whether it'll be kind of 6 months or longer. But yes, the focus will be for the next 2 years on making sure that we are better funding programs that take public dollars to be successful.
And we had someone write, "No breaking of hearts. What an amazing opportunity we've been given with access to this funding, and now an unexpected 4th round. What a gift." Thank you, Jenna, for delivering this great news today. Very nice to hear. All right. Those of you who have maybe unique situations or need to change information on your to receive the checks, childcare grants at doe.virginia.gov for specific questions. Log on to bill.com to change from receiving a paper check to a direct deposit, or to change your bank account information. Please do not send bank account information to DOE or to VECF, but add that information in your bill.com account. Really appreciate all of the gratitude that I'm seeing in these responses. And I think hopefully all of you providers know how grateful we are for you and the services that you provide every day, and often under a great deal of duress. Really appreciate that. All right. I think we are coming up on the 3 o'clock hour. Really appreciate the time and attention from such a full audience today. I think we covered a lot of information. Thank you for that, Jenna. Thank you, Vanessa, for providing the information. We'll send a recording of the event as well as the slides that will have, provide you with links and emails and the resources to receive additional information, ask questions, follow up on payments not received, etc. And really appreciate your time today. Wish you all the best. And Jenny, any final words?
No, just to echo the appreciation. Huge thanks to Kathy, the foundation, Karen for kicking us off, Vanessa for the really thoughtful work on helping folks if they've got questions about how to expend these dollars. And then, again, sometimes, we think we're super excited to be able to get this last round out to programs, but also realize that it continues to be a very challenging time to operate in, and figuring out how we can continue to work with you to address barriers that are coming from government, think about how we better fund programs that are participating and serving our most vulnerable kids and families through the Child Care Subsidy Program, and continue to improve. So we really, really appreciate you and are thankful for the work you do every day.
Ditto. Thanks so much, Jenna, and everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you.